Hi everyone, and welcome to the Ancient Future Q&A from my readers. This is where I'm going to answer all the questions that you want answered about the ancient future. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Well, Jacinta, what I learnt from writing the ancient future, I think first and foremost, was to trust my muses. Like, I am not a writer who sits there and plots everything out because I like to give my characters a say in what's going on. I just trust that my muses have already got that story all under control and they're just feeding it to me little by little. If I get lost, it's because I haven't researched something, I don't understand something that they're telling me, and so I just really focus on what they're trying to tell me and get on with it, really. There's been books that I've started and I've had no idea where they were going, The Eternity Gate, and really, up until three-quarters of the way through, I still didn't know where I was going. And it was just in that last quarter that it all started coming together perfectly. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have just listened. I also learnt about creating my own reality. I mean, I already believed that. I already knew about that. But I think my characters taught me so much more. Really, I learnt so much from them. I consider writing to be like, going on a holiday. And if you plan everything ahead, then you don't give the locals a chance to tell you what's going on or where to go or what to see or, what the current political environment is or what have you. So that's what I learned. I learned not to be too regimented about the story because you're going to miss things if you're just going about with your holiday plan and you're not actually really listening to the locals or interacting with the locals or giving them some say in what's going to happen. What would I have done differently? I would have, because The Ancient Future was my first book, and I didn't really know a whole lot about writing when I started writing it. And something that I did that you're not supposed to do is I'd head hop, which means you'd be in somebody's point of view or somebody's head, and then I'd hop to somebody else. Since I've I've I'm more like when I'm in a scene with a character, I'm just in their head rather than sort of hopping around from one person to another. And it's a common problem with first time writers. They do tend to do that, but that is something I would change. I may not have like go with the these, the thys, the thous, all that sort of thing either, although it was a really brilliant way of separating or distinguishing when somebody was speaking in the ancient tongue and somebody was speaking in modern English. But with this present past, I didn't have to do that because it was all set there and there was nobody from the modern time in that story. And I actually think that I preferred it, although I know my readers are going to go, no, no, we loved all the these, the thys and thous. And I actually had one of my readers ask me about that with this present past. Did I do that intentionally? Yes, I did, because it just gives it a wider audience appeal, I think. Some people will love that and some people won't like it so much. So I might have done that differently. The problems I've had as a writer, I suppose, I never had trouble finding stories. There's always one waiting. There still is. They're lining up. Um, so I think I just kept writing, even to my own detriment at times. I just keep writing. When I had children, people go, how did you write a book and have a baby at the same time? Well, I did it twice. But I would just put the baby down at 3 o'clock in the morning after that feed, and then I'd just stay up and write when there was nobody there. I just kept going, basically. My agent had a lot to do with my writing success. She's always been there for me. She's helped me with, any queries, any problems. My publishers have always been 100% behind whatever I want to do, even when I can't give them a synopsis, just a vague idea. They're just like, yeah, sure, go ahead, write it. So I've been very, very lucky, and the industry is getting much harder these days. I'm not a naysayer by any stretch of the imagination, but with piracy the way it is, and publishers not being able to sell as many books because they're all getting, pirated, etc. And it makes the writers look like they're losing popularity or something, but that's not the case at all. I think we're still as popular as we ever were, but a lot of the time our work is being pirated, and so we're not making money from those sales, and sooner or later we're going to lose a lot of writers through that. But the thing with writing, I've always found, is that write and you don't live, live and you don't write, and it's a very lonely profession. You spend a lot of time by yourself in a room, well, with your characters, but it is tough to keep going. You've got to really love it, and you've got to be really dedicated and have a lot of belief in yourself. And I think that I have, and that is what has kept me going. I think if you want to know why Tori ended up in the past, then you have to read This Present Past, because it does come up at the end of that book. So I'm not going to talk about that here because that would be spoilers. But why we don't know more about her mother, that's an interesting question. There was actually a lot more about Tori's mother in the original book, but for because she didn't come into it till very late in the piece, my editors decided that it would actually be better just to take her out of it. Like, you hear about her, but you don't actually see her. But she does come into it. Like, once we get into Atlantis and further along the line, we sort of hear more about her mum. But yeah, that's the answer. Is a lot of the info about Tori's mother got cut out of the book because it wasn't necessary to the story. It was just kind of dragging it out. Well, Rebecca, at that time when I started writing The Age of Future, 1996, the whole New Age movement was really quite huge, and it was in full swing, and everyone was into some sort of alternative healing or investigation or whatever. And I spoke about this a little bit when I was talking about The Ancient Future earlier. I mean, I had a lot of girlfriends. We all used to get together. Everybody was into something different, so we'd discuss ideas. My mother was very spiritual. She had a wide range of very interesting friends. There were psychics and spiritualists and parapsychologists, and that all got me incredibly interested in their work and everything they were doing. And so I picked up a lot from experience and having strange experiences myself. We had a haunted house when I was young, so I got very sensitive to ghosts. Whether other people believe in them, don't really care. I've had some really interesting experiences, which I wrote about in ghostwriting. So we'll, get to those stories further down the track when I talk about that book. But I'd say, yeah, my friends, the whole New Age movement, and my mother were probably the biggest influences insofar as the spiritual side of my books. Well, Avery, that's a huge question and quite a good one. The reason that I've been able to keep my timelines very clear and accurate through all the time jumping and backwards and forwards through different universes and everything that goes on in my books is because I have a very straight timeline in my head. And that is because I am not a writer who does edits. I am a writer who actually writes from the beginning to the end, and that's it. Because if I was going backwards and forwards doing edits and changing things and blah, 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 I'd lose track of it all. So I've just been very regimented right from the beginning in just following the story. And so the story has remained very clear in my mind as to, when things happened and where and all the rest of it. People are going, don't you have a big board where you've got it all mapped out somewhere? No, I don't. It's all mapped out in my brain. So if I go see now, I'm screwed and we won't be able to have any more books from this series. No, it's fine. But that's how I managed to do it and keep that linear line, because I just do one draft of any book from beginning to end. I take my time doing it. If there's something missing, I don't skip over it and keep going. No, I go and research until I find it. I read over till everything's perfect, and then I move on. And that's the way I work. Other writers do like edits. Ian Irvine, I think he does like about 8 or 10 edits for every book. I would just go absolutely insane. I'd lose track of everything if I did that. So that's how I've managed to do it. Well, basically, Jamie, I had no idea that there were going to be all those books coming. Um, when I started writing The Ancient Future, I actually thought it was a short story. I thought it actually finished um, when Tori and Melvin got married at the end of part one. And then it went on to part two and part three. And I thought, oh, okay, excellent. Got a nice big fat book out of that. And I was not going to ever do a sequel. Famous last words. So yeah, I actually just kept writing. I mean, they just kept coming out. I was actually going to go on to The Alchemist Key when I finished The Ancient Future. It was called The Hellfire Club then. It was going to be a completely different kind of book. But I actually, a clairvoyant friend of my mother's got in touch with me, and he went, you better write some synopsises for another couple of books, because I think your publishers are going to want a trilogy. And so I sat down and I thought about what I'd do with a trilogy, and I wrote the synopsises, and I was literally printing them out when I got the call from HarperCollins saying, oh, look, the book's doing so well, we'd really like a trilogy. And so that happened. And then I thought we were done. And then Celestial Triad happened, and so on and so forth. Like Triad of Being, we're in another universe. I thought, excellent, new characters. No, I kept recognizing them all, going, what are you all doing here? We've crossed over into another universe. Oh my god! And then that led to the Timekeepers series and the prequel, This Present Past. So it was kind of just a gradual thing that happened. It wasn't because I had this huge foresight. I was just focusing on what I was writing at the time, but it just kept going a layer deeper, a layer deeper, a layer deeper. We had somewhere else to go, something else to explore. So that's what happens. Well, Emma, I kind of answered your question earlier on with one of Jamie's questions, because she was asking me what I learned, and I was talking about my muses then. But yes, way back in the beginning, I definitely felt like I had muses just whispering in my ear, just feeding me the story. It was like I wasn't writing it at all. I was just taking dictation. And every now and again, it would get a bit hazy. I'd be going, why aren't I hearing it? And that would be around the time that I'd need to go research something, because they were telling me something I didn't understand. So I had to sort of go research it. Did I feel like it was Tori? Absolutely. Tori, I feel, is kind of like a higher version of myself. She's me if I was perfect. She definitely influenced me. She made me so much stronger. She made me so much more determined. She made me believe that I do create my own reality, that I could be a published author, that I could make a living out of it, because God knows I was told that. And that's why I started in the film industry writing scripts, because there was more money in it. But again, my imagination was so huge that wasn't really happening. And so and I got sick of waiting for everyone to nod their head. I mean, you literally you have to get the planets to align to get a book made into a film, and or even just get a film script made into a film. But with the Ancient Future, it was just I had this story I was dying to write. I didn't want to write it as a film script because I just was sick of waiting for everyone. So I sat down and started writing it as a book. I didn't listen to all those naysayers going, oh, if only 4% of writers make a living out of it. And if I'd listened to them, I never would have done it. So don't listen to other people, anybody who's a writer out there. Yes, it's tough, but it's always tough, you know. You've got different avenues now that you can pursue if you're not going to get put on by a major publisher. There's other ways of getting to where you want to go. So just stick at it. But yes, definitely my muses are amazing, and I think the more you write, the more your muses will stick with you through thick and thin. You can always rely on them to have a story ready to go whenever you're ready to write. Oh my God, Gavin, that is such a huge question. Did I create an alternative reality that I'm just writing about, and that's why we all connect with it so well? Well, actually, who knows? I mean, when you look at parallel universes and string theory and all that sort of stuff, I mean, they say we are all one, there is one being here, I am God, all that sort of thing. So, I mean, sure, maybe. Maybe I created a whole other reality that I'm just remembering and writing down, and that's why everybody relates to it so well. I'd love to think that's the case, that I'm that powerful at creating my own reality. I mean, I think we all would like to think we're that powerful, and I think we are. So anything's possible. Answered your first question about Stonehenge, about visiting Stonehenge before I wrote the book. I actually didn't write about Stonehenge because I didn't actually feel a connection with it. I felt a bigger connection with the smaller stone circles. I actually wrote about the King's Men just because it had been so well documented, but it's not actually one of the stone circles that I visited. But I visited a few and they all had the same kind of energy, those ones that had just been left untouched and were not really huge tourist attractions. They definitely did mark ley lines because you could feel the energy pulsing through those places. So yes, I did go and investigate them. Which character did I relate to more? I relate to all my characters. They're all part of me. Tori, yeah, as I said before, is kind of like a perfect version of me, I guess. And all my other characters are based on people that I know, or you know, yeah, no, mainly people that I know. So yeah, I relate to them all very well, and they're all very precious to me. I have a particular soft spot for like Selwyn, Ringbalin, Noah, that character, and all his incarnations. How long did it take me to get published? Well, it took me, uh, I think it was a year of writing, another 6 months of editing. So it took me about, from the time I started writing it to the time it was published, probably a couple of years, which is amazing for a first time writer. Um, how did you sign with HarperCollins? I actually told that story. I think at the end of the video talking about the ancient future. What's my advice for unpublished writers? Well, actually, I'm going to be giving a lot of that advice throughout all these videos. But my main advice is to really just sit down and keep going. Keep chipping away at it. Keep working. Even if you don't like what's coming out, you can edit that. That's what editors are for. It's okay. As long as you keep the story flowing and it's something that you're passionate about. That's the main thing. Something write about what you want to write about, not what you think other people are going to want to read. And I think that's going to come up in my writing videos. So I think that's all for the Q&A. That's all the questions I have for so far. If you've got any more, you can leave them in the comments below here. If you want any of the links to, my books, my Facebook sites, my Patreon, all that sort of stuff, also below in the comments. Thank you so much for your participation, and keep the questions coming and the suggestions. I'm open to all of them, and thanks for your interest, and I'll see you again soon. Oh, like, share, and subscribe. That's really important. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope you got something out of this. Bye for now.